Okay, there's going to be a lot going on while I have this conversation with you guys. I said I would make a video about hypergamy for guys, really, and how to avoid it. How to avoid getting friend zoned, and how to not end up bitter and angry and driving a van into a bunch of women. Okay, so here's the deal. I had a lot of guy friends growing up. We all know what that means. Yeah, I had a lot of bitter, resentful men hanging out, basically. So here's the deal. I used to be a tomboy. Still consider myself really a tomboy. I don't consider myself really anything. I never thought about gender, which is how I ended up with a bunch of guy friends, who then, in turn, ended up bitter because I never fucked any of them. Or dated any of them. Okay, so I will give an example of one instance in particular. And by the way, at this point, I am friends with none of these guys, and almost all of them hate me. So, some have gone out of their way to do extreme amounts of damage to my reputation, and besmirch my character, and facilitate vendettas against me. Some guys take rejection better than others. And, anyway, but I digress. Anyway, so, here's the thing. I'm doing a lot of stuff all at the same time. I apologize, it's going to be messy. Okay, so this one guy that I knew during my undergrad years at college, we were both into electronic music. We were both into dancing, nightclubs, the scene. He didn't go out as much as I did. I was a club rat. But he was really, really cool, and he was really, really sweet. And I had anxiety problems, and he had anxiety problems. So I think, for me, it just kind of naturally drew us together. I wasn't anxious to quite the level that he was, but within the group of people that we kind of met through, before my mom died, and then after my mom died, I got much more anxious, of course, much more depressed, those sorts of things. And he and I kind of bonded more tightly. He showed up, he would, hang out with me. I stayed with him for like a week at one point while my dorm was getting ready or something like that. Him and his roommate, who I actually did kind of have a crush on and tried to hook up with. Hey, Ben. Anyway, okay, so I was hanging out with him and we were friends, right? And he would do anything for me. And he was always there. And he always wanted to hang out. So he's my bud. So I was getting everything from him that you would usually get from a boyfriend without the emotional commitment and physical commitment of being in a relationship, which is apparently, I found out much later, what he actually wanted. And he ended up, in the end, being quite aggressive and resentful with me and did something really inappropriate years later that really disappointed me. And I was like, oh, never mind. Anyway, because that's, to explain the female perspective on this, the female friend perspective when a girl's friend zoned you, at least for me, and I've talked to other girls who feel the same way about this, once you have been made to understand that's where you are, if you are trying to manipulate your way out of that, it becomes an affront to the friendship. For me, I felt like I didn't give him any signals that implied anything. We were friends, and this is why now at this point I realize, having lived around especially older males, there's no such thing as, I don't think really a girl can be friends with, you can be acquaintances. I don't know about straight up like hanging out all night, having sleepovers, friends. But anyway, he ended up getting quite bitter about it. And this is why you need to manage the amount of attention that you give to girls and the amount of availability and vulnerability that you give to girls who aren't responding in a way that you're interested in. I and other females I've discussed this stuff with feel a bit betrayed when you've been looking at someone as a friend and suddenly they start kind of letting you know that there's all this other stuff going on. It's almost like you realize someone's been kind of peeping Tomming on you, or yeah, like it's a weird, can be a weird kind of feeling, like almost betrayal of the friendship. So, know and define your boundaries of what you want and what you're willing to accept from the relationship with the female early on. Don't get 6 months in to now you're completely friend-zoned. For this guy, it was years, like all through my undergrad years. He was my bud. There were a couple of times there was one time, and that's when we really kind of stopped hanging out. He got weird in my room once, and I was like, this is not the program. What are you doing? Cut it out. We're in here because my decks are in here. So anyway, that is key. Don't get to a position where, because you will be valued as a friend. Like, this guy was my friend, and it really hurt me when he tried to betray our friendship. Because I think, if I'm understanding male perspective correctly, very often we don't see ourselves as girls, we see ourselves as people. Guys see us as girls. Something other, that the walls of which they want to breach. So, excuse me for a second. Alright, so, that. Excuse me as I moisturize, because I'm being turned into a human potato chip up here slowly due to winter and the fact that I ain't white. Don't play head games. Don't play head games, because those will come back to get you. If you start out with playing head games and manipulating and doing all the Jedi mind trick stuff, no girl worth having is going to then from that go into a relationship with you and want to continue to be psychologically abused, essentially. If you think longer term than that, all you're going to end up with is a really dysfunctional relationship. So, that would be my biggest tip to guys. And build confidence, because confidence is incredibly attractive. And especially if you're dealing with a female who's already confident. You just got to punch your weight. You know, if you lack in confidence in certain ways, you need to find somebody else who is also on a journey to build confidence in those certain ways. Don't try to be with somebody who is in incredibly different spaces than you. And that's a tendency we have, to be attracted to people that have qualities we want. So that can be problematic, because I've done the thing where you try to be with someone and try and kind of fix her upper, or try to build them into a happier, healthier person. And what that usually turns into is resentment. And also is not satisfying for anybody in the relationship. So, punch your weight. I always wanted to get on that website, hotornot.com, at least for the physical aspect. And I think that's a lot of it for a lot of people. I personally am not that into it. Because of growing up mixed race, there was just, and where I lived, there was no one around me to try and get any kind of frame of reference with that looked like me, so I don't really have that. I don't have that comparative, like, I already assumed I looked or knew I looked so different from everybody else that I didn't bother sitting around comparing looks. But if you're hung up on your looks, maybe try hotornot.com, post your picture. I don't even know if that's website's still functional. I just know people around me did it during college. And see where you stand in the eyes of others physically, if you're concerned about building your confidence over your physical appearance. If it's in other areas, like a certain skill set, or you want to be funnier or whatever, listen to comedy podcasts. Find comedians you respect. If you can make a girl laugh, that's really helpful. I promise you that. That's the most important thing, really. People don't want to be around people who are going to make them miserable, generally. So if you can be funny, or really engaging, or whatever that person's thing is, and that's what I mean by punching your weight. Whether it's, you've got to consider your tribe, consider your energy, and then consider the people that are going to be into that. And, so if you're, if you're attracted to people that have traits that you want but don't have, understand that if those people are happy with who they are and they like those traits about themselves, they're going to be seeking other people that have those traits as well. So even though it's your tendency to go out and look for people that have things that you want, understand that if it's a healthy thing that breeds high self-esteem and confidence and all the rest, that person will want somebody else who already also has those things. Hopefully that's not confusing. Okay, so that's really, I think, all I can offer. Don't hang around with girls being friend-zoned for years, hoping that one day desperately it will turn into something. Throw that bait in the water, fish quickly, and if you pull up nothing, I would cut bait and move on. Cut the line and move on, because it's a betrayal, whether you mean to or not, to kind of just hang around manipulatively hoping, even sometimes sabotaging opportunities in other relationships for the girl. I've had that as well. Just kind of hoping that eventually this antelope will end up wounded enough that you'll be able to latch on and devour. It's not even my metaphor. Somebody else used that. It was a guy I used to know. He was particularly mental. Anyway, ketogenic peanut butter cookies. I was prepared. Even though I have other problems. I have an infection in my face. That's what some of this chunk is from. That's my advice to guys. And that is solid advice. I'm promising you. I don't want to say be a human doormat, but don't give too much if you're not getting back what it is specifically you were looking for. Feel it out. And if it's not if she's like, no, we're just friends, I just see you that way, take her at her word, pull back. I would cut off contact. And then, if you are a really important, meaningful part of her life, emotionally, if she misses you, she'll come to you. That's my advice. Yeah. Okay, see? How's the boys, too? Not just the girls.